everybody, this is Steve Falcon Napier. Welcome to Circle of Brilliance. Today we're going to begin a new subject. It has to do with tension management in current affairs. And this is going to be, I think, quite the deep dive for all of you into what you've actually learned over all of these years of either participating in the Circle of Brilliance or with your other training you've received as far as tension management and change works goes. But I think you're really going to find it's definitely going to be put to the test. Before that, though, I did receive an email from Tim White about this article that he stumbled across about the 4 different types of power in leadership. And so I'll just quickly introduce it, and then I'm going to set it aside so that when Tim joins in, he can tell us whatever it's all about. But basically, the point of this article is there are 4 types of power: power over someone, power with, power within, and power to. So power over is built on force, etc. Power with is shared, grows out of collaboration. Power within is the ability to recognize the differences in others and the self-confidence to challenge assumptions along with long-held beliefs. That's the belief that you can make a difference. And then Tim's joined us. Yay. And then the last one is the power to. This allows team members to maintain their own agency and acknowledges their unique potential to make a difference. Now, what Tim did was he decided to see if he could overlay these on the change grid. And I'm going to ask you guys to kind of weigh in on that same thing. Just know that he's already helped us by saying that because these are about power, these are about leadership dynamics, they're all going to fall inside of one quadrant. What quadrant do you think all this power stuff is going to overlay upon?
Power.
Well, power, but where? Up, out, down, or in?
Out.
Out. And so this is where leadership lives. This is that whole driver kind of a quadrant. And so, and certainly when we think about drivers and what drivers hope to do, or what any of us, when we are in our driver energy, want to do, is we want to get something done. And if we can influence it, whatever, these are the 4 general types of power that they've identified that can come into play. Kathy, you've unmuted. What would you like to throw in?
Hi, T. No, I just unmuted to say that I was to agree that it was out. It was out grid, and
Yeah.
I'm just having difficult. My mouse isn't working well today, so bear with me.
No worries. Okay, and so so the question then becomes, if you think in terms of the 4 out-grid energies, so you've got a driven driver, an expressive driver, an amiable driver, and an analytical driver, do any of these 4 just kind of immediately click for you into one of those positions? So power over, force, coercion. Yeah.
Power over connected to driver energy.
Yeah, that would be what kind of driver we're thinking.
A driven driver.
A driven driver. And some of what it says in this description, I think would actually at least tip its toe into the outgrid danger zone. So hopefully we're saying that this, when you are wielding power over, you are still at least having that amiable energy in the tertiary position. You're not in the danger zone for all that, because this could easily become a danger zone situation. Yep. Power with. Anyone want to get, where do you think?
Yeah. Power with is definitely amiable driver.
Yeah, the amiable driver, because you see words like collaboration, respect, mutual support. This obviously involves an appreciation for others who are involved or impacted by whatever is going on. So that makes a perfect good overlay. So that leaves us with power within and power to. And this is where I'm hoping a debate is going to occur. So
I would say power within is still a driver, but it's not necessarily the I'm sorry, it's not the driven driver danger zone piece. It's more of a driven, possibly the driven driver, but short of the danger zone.
Okay, and that's where you would put power within that.
Possibly. I don't, possibly.
Yeah. Yep. And where else energetically do you think power to or power within might overlay, might click?
I think power within may fall in that. Is it 9-9 right in the middle of all four quadrants, possibly?
Right in the middle, because when I read this description about power within, I'm wondering if I'm not describing the PowerPoint, if you will, of the driver quadrant. So not the PowerPoint on the whole change grid, but just the PowerPoint on the driver quadrant, which would be coordinates 9, 9. So when I'm there, am I able to recognize the differences in others, have the self-confidence to challenge assumptions with long-held beliefs, the belief that we can make a difference, having the personal power to recognize and have a sense of your own capability? That feels more centered to me inside of that quadrant, as opposed to an expressive driver energy or an analytical driver energy, which are the only two energies available to us once we place two there. So I'm thinking that when I think about the power that an expressive driver is displaying, how would you characterize it? I guess what I'm suggesting is that I need more types in order for this to really make sense, because I want to put power within in the middle. And by the way, just to get it out of the way, power two allows team members to maintain their own agency and acknowledges their unique potential to make a difference.
Yeah. I
I'm
thought
thinking,
apathy because of
well,
delegation.
yeah, there is a delegation, but inside we have to, it's delegation, but keep it inside of that downgrade or that outgrid quadrant. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
downgrade part of the outgrid quadrant is this analytical driver. So I think you guys are all thinking the same kind
Yeah.
of space. And obviously that analytical driver, I would like to say, instead of power to, can it also be power how to? Because this is obviously where the greater level of understanding is found. Because I mean, look, they're analytical. They figured something out. They're watching something, or I don't know. There's a practice, a procedure, something that's going on. Because that's also characteristic of moving from power apathy, where we want to build systems and I don't know, even software to help us automate tasks before we end up in apathy. Well, it's similar here. Just again, it's all relative. So, and if we move within, or yeah, the power within to the center here, I'm left with a void. And that void is, what is this power that really would overlay on the amiable driver sort of space? What power does an amiable driver have? It's not power over, it's not power with, although that's part of it. No, 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 that's not where I wanted to go. Sorry, not the amiable driver, the expressive driver. Sorry, sorry, sorry. So we have a good overlay for a driven driver, the power over. Inside, we have the power with in grid. Downgrid, we have the power to, or the power how to. In the middle, we have the power within. Am I saying that right? Which leaves the void of the expressive driver. What power does an expressive driver tend to wield or come from? We didn't quite hear that, David. You're off mic a little bit.
Well, they know where our ICBMs are. They can tell you, I mean, if a war starts, that's valuable information.
Right, and so is that power over, or what would that be?
Across our country.
Yeah, yeah. Let's get other people to open up and throw some stuff in too. What kind of power would you say an expressive driver is actually wielding or utilizing? Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
I'm thinking just the power within, maybe that's the wrong label because within a definition, power within is the belief that you can make a difference. And I think when you're more expressive and you're displaying that energy, I don't know, the picture that came in my mind as a presenter, and you're using that particular energy, it resonates with me, but it's just the word within is not resonating with me.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
yeah.
just a
Well,
label.
And I can see that because a lot of these characteristics they're including in Power Within, to me, also feel slightly expressive in what
Mhm.
they're doing. So is this shifted a little bit? And even if we look at the adjective map, every time we look at an adjective and we talk about where it lands on the change grid, one of the things we don't often talk about, but this was part of the whole adjective mapping process, is that every adjective has a different impact zone. And what I mean by that is that while it may find its epicenter where we place it, it might leave a very small footprint, or it might cover a very large footprint of the change grid. It would just be expressing itself in varying degrees, if you will. And so when I think about this Power Within, I don't think it's completely isolated to 9.9. I think it has an impact zone kind of around it. And maybe it has a little bit that's actually upgrid, a little bit that's actually in grid, relatively speaking. But it just feels like I need that centered space, and that centered place seems to be here. Now, maybe we're saying Power Within is upgrid, and Power 2, we've already said, is downgrade, in which case we need a different word for what you would put at 9.9. What does 9.9 really use in terms of power wise? Power energies, yeah.
So
Tim, go
Dean,
ahead. Yeah, Tim.
okay. I was purposefully sitting back because I wanted to hear what the other team members thought about this. Um, for me, I would see Power Within as being the closest, excuse me, the closest of them to the PowerPoint of the grid.
Yes. Mhm. Well,
Because
the PowerPoint of the whole grid.
correct.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and because for me, my interpretation of that is more of an internal energy.
Mhm, mhm.
And an examination of self as it relates to how I manage power.
Okay.
And so that's why I thought it was more in grid within that quadrant. And as I said, of the four of them being the closest to the PowerPoint of the grid.
I believe, we've talked about things applying at the macro level and the micro level as well. I think this is one of the situations where that comes into valuable play. And so you're absolutely right. When we were to look at the entire change grid and say energetically where it's describing it is, it would definitely resonate with the center of the change grid. Although I don't hear as much detachment in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
As,
I would argue that the center is way more detached,
Mhm.
and that the power within, when you talk about the self-confidence to challenge assumptions, belief that you can make a difference,
Mhm.
personal power, I see that as expressive.
All right, and so Power Within might be expressive. Now, again, this idea about it being slightly in grid, I can resolve that. And so, Tim, this goes back to your observation. If we say that every area on the change grid actually has an entire change grid available to it, it's just the scale of the change grid that's going to change. Can I not overlay the entire change grid diagram as you know it, as you see it right here, but just overlay it on top of this outgrid quadrant? Well, the answer is, of course I can. In which case, the PowerPoint of the whole change grid ends up also being the PowerPoint of the other change grid. It's just going to be a difference in scale. So for example, when I'm at the PowerPoint of the change grid as a whole, I think of myself as being not just detached from a particular issue, but detached altogether. So I am in the world, but not of it. I'm hovering above, looking at everything. It's not situation specific. That's at least the quest there. When I think about the PowerPoint of the outgrid quadrant, the PowerPoint of the driver energy, I think there's an intention there. There's action being taken. There's a lot going on. So suddenly, instead of me being detached from everything, I'm detached from a smaller subset of what everything would include. And that would specifically be what they're talking about in this particular paragraph. So I can make a case for it. But when I read that this is about that you can make a difference, I'm hearing a little bit of the preacher on Sunday morning. I'm hearing a little bit of that expressive energy coming into play there. So it may very well be that the impact zone of that power within encompasses something more than just this isolated spot. If it does, I would suggest that it probably leans more upgrid than any other direction. Would you guys agree, disagree? Thoughts? Don't care? Whatever.
Yeah, I agree. That was my point. I think that's it. It's expressing oneself, one's confidence, etc.
Yeah.
Is how I'm seeing it. It's how I'm reading it. I could be wrong here.
Well, look, look, we're the circle, so we're all just figuring things out. So I don't know that there's really ever going to be a right answer, but I do believe that we can reach a general consensus on a lot of these integrations that we perform, and just to say like, well, that's useful. I don't know how it's going to change the readings that I do, but it's reinforcing the things I know about this particular area of the change grid. If we are going to put that within upgrid, then I'm going to end up with an empty spot. So I've got power over, I've got power with, I've got power within. So I either need to come up with a better description for what the power is that's used in the exact center, or I need to use that power within there and come up with a different descriptor for what's happening there. I don't know that we're going to resolve that today. I don't know that we need to resolve it today. Well, I just wanted to give Tim the feedback that I see how it overlays. I agree with the overlay he put together. And by the way, if you guys want, I can send you PDFs of all the stuff we're looking at. I have a different one if you just want to know more about that. Oh, and Tim, for some reason, it really stretched the daylights out of the change grid. But he was definitely, although he put power within more in grid so that it was a little bit here, and power with more up grid. So let me show you another document that I found as I was doing this. If you follow the link, he got this from Stop at Nothing. And again, let me just do this for now. I hate referring to things that you guys, can't have easy access to. So let me just slide this PDF into chat and see if you guys can get it. So anyway, and they go through more of a description. So the front part of it is what Tim's already shared, but we go over and now we look at what does power over versus power within kind of really incorporate or encompass behaviorally. So if you have power over, you want to use coercion to drive performance. Perfectionistic. You are a knower, owner of the truth. I'm right and you are wrong, period. Blaming others, using shame and fear, criticizing publicly, uses KPIs to compare and punish. Tone and volume can be laced with anger and frustration. Fighting every fight punishes others for mistakes or failures. Okay, first of all, everything that I've read here fits where on the change grid? Anybody?
Outgrid.
This is
Outgrid.
outgrid, and this is the outgrid danger zone. So this isn't even the healthy part of the outgrid quadrant. This isn't describing someone who's sitting at 10-10 on the change grid, where their power as a leader becomes most effective, most efficient, most elegant. This is over the top. There's a different pathology behind this one. That's going to be important in just a short while, by the way. And then you come over here, this whole idea about power within, which we're saying, and their position now is the opposite of power over. That would then make power within be very in-grid. So feeling comfortable sharing power, pursuing excellence, when things are good enough, accepts mistakes and corrects them, voices questions and concerns, asks for positive and constructive feedback, being a learner and a work in progress, accountable to your commitments, source of calm in stormy weather, confident in their capabilities, they ask for help. This does feel like an amiable driver, but maybe a little bit leaning more to the amiable side of things than the, how do I put this? The amiable driver rather than the driven amiable driver. To me, if you have a driven amiable driver, you're not just going to feel comfortable sharing that power. There's going to be a desire or a drive to kind of pull that power out of others, or give them situations to excel. So yeah, there comes a point in time where I think this needs to be more of a list of action items than just a list of being, if you will. Yeah, whatever. And then you put these other two in the middle: power to and power with. Power with, you share power by trusting and empowering. Okay. You give positive and you foster an environment of trust and accountability. You give positive and constructive feedback. Okay, okay. Your ideas about let's find the solution. You foster a climate of respect, feeling safe and free. Okay, as I'm reading these, I'm feeling more of a stopping point along a continuum with power over and power within at the extremes, which shouldn't be surprising. That's how they've just presented this little diagram. But are they saying power to and power with are concurrent? There's no difference energetically between power to versus power with. I'm looking for something that leans towards the expressive energy and something that leans more towards the analytical energy, still in the driver quadrant. Like clarifies and validates alignment. To me, that feels like it's a little bit of a downgrade. When I think of accountability, I think there's an analytical element that's coming along there, using KPIs to improve performance. So I can feel that some of these are definitely leaning a little bit into the analytical energy. But as they've described it, they're almost putting power to, power with at the exact coordinates of 9, 9. All right. So thoughts about that before I throw out my little final thing on this subject?
Yeah, see, because when you look at that sentence right below that graph, where the author says, by looking at the list, you can see that the aim here is not to maximize our own power over others, but rather to create the conditions where power can be shared. And I think that that's what that power to and power with explanation attempts to do, is to talk about how we can share power versus having power over someone else, or examining our own internal power.
Right. And I think that's really the intention of whoever wrote this. In fact, I did look a little bit. They've attributed it to Just Associates back in 2006. So that 15 years ago. I don't know if Just Associates is still around, probably is. But Just Associates is basically a worldwide women's movement that's all about challenging beliefs, challenging sorts of things. And they teach people how to be on that mission, how to go out there and really advocate for the kinds of changes. So I think what they're really trying to accomplish here is just say, we want to get rid of all these power over qualities and instead use these power with and power to and power within sorts of qualities that are designing or what do I say? Describing a little bit more about what the person should be doing and how the person should be behaving within themselves. So I think
Which,
it's interesting.
which I think is useful for when we're looking at maneuvers, trying to assist clients based on where they may have plotted around certain activities.
Yes.
This can be useful in trying to make those changes.
Particularly if you can show based on where they're plotting their change grid that they're trying to exert power over other people in order to do something. Again, that'd be out of the danger zone more often than not.
Yes.
And the people that are like locked into the power within to the point that they're pretty much right. They're still in the outgrid. They're still in the amiable driver quadrant, but they're so close to that center spot of the change grid as a whole. We may want to encourage them to step up a little bit more, become a leader in a group, within a group of followers. Don't just let things unfold. Take some of this stuff. Take the initiative to do some sorts of things. And this is where things start seeming a little bit more collaborative in nature. I'm fine with all that. I just feel like I'm missing the enthusiasm, the power of enthusiasm to that expressive driver and the power of knowledge to the person who is the analytical driver. So I don't know how I would describe those powers, but I think that they are also involved. They're also very much something to be factored in. They just haven't been labeled by this particular model. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that was a long answer to a short question, Tim. But did that help in any way?
Oh, yes, very much so. Thank you so much.
Good. I do have all these as PDFs. If you guys would like, I can drag them over to you. They even have a worksheet that's involved. I'll chat that over to everybody. And I might as well, I do like this little JPEG because it's a little easier to see the distinctions they were making. So anyway, I've chatted those over to everybody. You're welcome to download them or discard them as you see fit. All right. Now, with that, let's get into the core subject that I wanted to cover today, and that is tension management in current affairs. Now, what I would like to be able to do during this call series is to bring up very much hotspot topics, hotspot situations, things that really are provocative, things that really are, debatable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to take a look at the ugly that's going on in the world around us, not just limited to home, but as we have these discussions, it is imperative to the goal of these discussions that we realize we're not looking at one another's personal beliefs. We're not looking at one another's personal values. We're not looking for one another's personal opinions. Instead, what we're doing is looking at a situation and the parties involved in that situation or impacted by that situation and asking ourselves, where are they on the change grid? How did they get there? Is that serving them well? Where else should they be? If they've been moved there, by whom and for what reasons? And so we want to be able to look at all the players in any of these dramas that we can so easily find out there and just ask ourselves, where are people on the change grid when it comes to their involvement in whatever it is that happens to go on. So fair enough as we get into this that you realize you guys are here as tension management experts to describe, based on what you know about tension management and the change grid, who's where on the change grid and is it serving them well? Why is this going on, etc. Okay, any thoughts about the overall shape of the exercise? No, we good? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so here goes. We might as well talk about the biggest of all the issues that are going on in just a short while, if not already. Trump is to be indicted. Now, there are a lot of players that are involved in this whole thing as it unfolds. Again, looking only at this from a tension management perspective. If you were President Trump and you were the one being indicted, where do you think Trump is on the change grid at this very moment?
Outgrid.
Outgrid. And we think he's outgrid because of how we have observed his behavior in the past. He's not going to remember the four survival techniques. We had flee, we had fight, we had freeze, and we had fade. He is not running away. He's showing up. Regardless of what we think about it, we have to look at tension management. He is showing up and he is there prepared to fight. That's what's really going on. Now, we can now say the next question. As we do this assessment of where someone is on the change grid, we have to remember that it is activity specific. And then we have to ask the question, do you think they're there incidentally, inadvertently, naturally, or are they presenting themselves as being in that situation for a different reason? And so going back to President Trump, we're thinking, well, behaviorally, we certainly know that it's likely to be a fight because historically, that's how he tends to approach things. And if you've read his book, you know very clearly that's one of his big strategies. So now, is that what he is genuinely feeling at this very moment in time? Or is he representing himself as feeling that way at this point in time because it serves some sort of an objective he might have in mind? Thoughts about that? Tim, you've unmuted. What would you like to throw in?
Well, my thought is that the feeling would be more upgrade.
All right.
That it's, you know, one psychology article I read said that fundamentally we have four emotions: happy, sad, angry, or afraid, and that there are dimensions of those four.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think the fight is the reaction to that emotion of fear, of the emotion that says that I'm being threatened. And so what do we do from a behavioral standpoint? Would in this case be the fight that you just described. So
Yeah, well, obviously, if we wanted to help people become, the best person, that we'd say you need to do some PowerPoint maneuvers before, while all this stuff is going on all around you. You want to really fix that. Get back to the center for a second. Everybody, just get back to the center. Can we do that, please, please, please? Unfortunately, that's not what we tend to observe, mostly because it's not particularly newsworthy. Right? If you think about what life is like inside of the green circle, where's the story? Where's the money to be made by moving an audience to one outlet versus another outlet? You know what I mean? So part of what we're looking at is very much skewed because of how we get our information about whatever it is that's going on. So, but today we have the issue we have. We might as well seek to understand it, and so. We certainly know that there is an outgrid energy that is happening, and we would certainly also believe that there could be an upgrid energy going on, which gets me to the dark side of the change grid, which we talked about yesterday. So if indeed someone is so far outgrid that they are going to be doing the real fighty kinds of things here that you see that are here, then you have to go, well, but if it was me, I'd certainly still be afraid because this is serious stuff. And while I might be trying to show the really strong force, whether it's deliberate or just his nature, I don't know. I don't know the man. But whatever it is, it may very well be that this is being projected for an additional purpose. It is, I think, might be helping what his fear happens to be, as Tim pointed out. But you got to kind of be, where you really are on the change grid. It's not surprising to see this because danger zones are physically adjacent to one another. So again, our goal in doing this exercise is to help you guys really examine what's going on in the world around us from a very different vantage point or a very different lens. To do that, we have to detach ourselves from whatever it is that's going on, so get ourselves as close to the center as we can, so we can say in our powers of observation, this is who we see involved, and this is where we see them right now, and here's why, etc. Okay, so now if at any point you guys aren't finding this to be a valuable exercise, feel free to just say so, but it really has a very positive intention, and that's to understand really what's going on. So now let's think about another player who's involved in this whole drama, and I'll let you guys pick. It can be anybody at all, so it's still around the whole issue of indictment. Who else is involved, and where are they on the change grid?
Alvin Bragg.
Okay, so we got Alvin Bragg. He's the DA. No, what is his actual title?
He's the DA.
He's the DA. All right. So it's basically his case to be presenting.
Yep.
And so where is he on the change grid?
I think he's more where your cursor was just pointing. I think he's got some concerns. I don't think he has the perceived ability that Trump has, but I think it's a challenge.
Oh, yeah. All right. And so again, we can just look at this. The challenge that he faces is absolutely unprecedented. I mean, for once we use that word and it's actually real. So it is unprecedented or whatever. So I get it. I would be upgrid as well. In fact, do you guys recognize where you are on the change grid in those seconds leading up to your client introducing you to the audience you're about to speak before? It's the same kind of energy. You've got a solid level of ability to do it, but every audience is different, and every time you deliver your message, it's going to be slightly different. So there's going to be that upgrade energy, and there's also going to be plenty of ability to help bring that in. But hopefully, it moves you to more of these, more into the driver quadrant, because the show must go on. And so I would be thinking right now, that Bragg would be outgrid for sure, but more on the upgrid side of things than the downgrid side of things.
Yep,
Disagree, disagree.
agree.
All right. Now, where should Bragg be in order to do the best job of, presenting his case in a way that
More downgrade.
he needs to be more downgrade, still driver, but I would like to think that if law is actually respected enough to, and I'm talking about law as lawyers, respected enough to realize they do follow rules. There are procedures, there are these things in place. That's a highly analytical pursuit. A good court case, regardless of the outcome, is an exercise in solid analysis. And so, and it's got to get done, obviously. We'd like him to be fully engaged in what's going on. And so this is the sweet spot for him to be. But you figure with all the media around and all that going on, that's got to also pull you upgrid. Now, one caution as we're talking about this, notice I haven't said the exact task we're looking at. We're just going energetically, overall energetically. This is the vibe we're picking up from. Keep in mind, what we base our thoughts and feelings on is limited to the information we've been able to acquire, plus whatever processing of that information we do in our own heads. And so whatever we might be thinking Bragg is or Trump is or whatever, we don't know. We're not in that person's head. We are looking at cues that tell us the likelihood of someone being in some particular place on the change grid. So Bragg is at least slightly upgrid. Hopefully he's not way up here where he's too nervous or might not be the right person for the task at hand, but he needs to be right here. Trump, we know for certain, is presenting himself as being this outgrid fighter. It may very well be a real part of his just nature, but we're also thinking there are moments of high upgridness going on. I mean, come on, this is a criminal case, and whatever it is, it is. But there's another element that's going on, if we'll go back to Trump for just a second, and that is that if I look at the dark side, oops, sorry. No, you need to come up. It's you that needed to go down. If we look at the dark side, keep in mind that there are times when people who have been in an outgrid danger zone situation and have been confronted about that, taken to task about that, whatever, they will present themselves as being a victim of whatever's going on. And so not all these words, but some of these might be applying as well. Now, is that being done deliberately as a conscientious maneuver for someone to do in order to achieve a particular outcome? Positioning ourselves as victims, how might that serve us well? Or is this something that's genuinely in his feelings? For all I know, the man genuinely does feel victimized, and it's not just talking points. He genuinely, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not close enough to him, never will be. So this is why I'm saying this is all an exercise in identifying tension as we see it or as it's being presented to us, which brings us to the third group that I think is worth looking at. And so anyone want to throw one out? Who do you think might fall into another big group of
Melania.
Well, Melania would be very interesting. In fact, right now, if we look at what we know about Melania, what's one thing we know for certain?
She hopes he gets convicted.
Shucks. Little comic relief there or whatever. We know that she chose to stay at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if she's still there, if she found a way to get to New York. I mean, she can afford a flight. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that at the moment, does she feel more involved or maintaining a difference? And is that deliberate? And if so, for what purposes? So again, from a tension management perspective, why might you not want to jump into the whole media circus that's surrounding this whole thing? Brian, you've unmuted.
She's got a son to protect.
She has a son to protect. He's the one, by the way, in all this drama that's been going on for years. He's the one I feel sorry for. Poor kid's just going like, I just wanted to go to school like anybody else.
Yeah, that's what I often,
feel like all this is putting a toll on people who might not otherwise want to be a part of that and may not even be conditioned for it. I think a person like Donald Trump is probably conditioned for that. He's been doing it for so long that, to your point, I don't think he knows the difference between, these kinds of things. I think he's just conditioned that way because I think, we train our nervous system to respond in a certain way. Like think about a person who grew up in war-torn countries, and when they hear a loud explosion, they might not have the same trigger as we would when we hear it. Their nervous system is just conditioned for that. It'll be like, oh yeah, gunfire or loud firecracker. And we're like, what? Let's get out of here,
Yeah, no, well, it's exactly true. It plays out on many levels. One very common comment that we find for people visiting Manhattan for the very first time is they are overwhelmed by the amount of activity
And
on
noise.
every street, the noise, the constant motion all around you. So they're just that quickly, they're just ready to escape from it because it's just overwhelming. Where if you grew up there, what do you think about walking around Manhattan?
Yeah. In fact, if it's quiet, those people, because that's the first place I landed when I came to the
Right.
States, and it was just, I got literally a headache from the honking of the noise and people moving
Right.
all around. I'm like, why are these people walking so close to me? It was a sheer nightmare for me, like
Yep,
literally.
absolutely.
For me, a part of this, I agree with what Brian was sharing. It's par for course. It's what you sign up for.
Yeah.
For Donald Trump and Melania, this isn't caught by surprise, and even how this is possibly going to turn out. I mean, it's part of the inner workings of the institution that they're a part of. It's no different than professional athletes that are multimillionaires. We may look at their situation, our perspective is different from theirs, right?
Mhm.
Because their reality is completely different. Like being from the military, right? The perspective that someone has from the outside looking in is completely different than when you're on the inside.
Yep.
It's par for course.
Exactly. And so again, from a tension management perspective, I want this exercise to really be about you guys getting greater confidence in your ability to quickly determine what level of tension an individual or a group of individuals might be experiencing, and then be able to talk about how might that be serving them well. And if it isn't serving them well, then how is it working against them? So it really is this idea. And I can't think of any better way to do it than to look at what's readily available right there in life as we know it. So to finish Linda's request about Melania, Melania seems at this point in time to at least be physically separated from whatever's going on. And so she can stay off the cameras, all that sort of stuff. I don't know what's going on emotionally or whatever. I've got no idea what's going on. Everything that we might have heard is simply conjecture, but then there she is. Now, if I said to you, instead of being someone who is just looking at this situation to describe it, I'd like you to now look at this situation as though you are an advisor to people, the different players. Why might you be supporting their current location on the change grid? Or why might you be trying to encourage them to change their position on the change grid? You guys with me on what the task is? Yeah.
Yeah, I would support it because I think it's a healthy place to be out grid, going through this court, going through these proceedings.
Right.
You do need to be out grid on this because it is important and it's going to require you to stay in front and stay on top and manage the process.
Right. We talk about coordinates 1010 as being the place of optimal Olympic performance. Right. And so this is simply the business equivalent of an Olympic performance. A test is most definitely underway. And you've got to keep yourself in a place where you can maximize your ability to meet the challenges that need to be met. However, if you're even one step further out grid, what happens to your effectiveness?
It's not good, but I think probably that's where the lawyers come in, because the lawyers, I believe, are there to move President Trump more toward the center if he starts going into the danger zone.
Right. Now, think about this for a second then. We just added another population. So where do you think Trump's attorneys are on the change grid?
I think they're outgrid.
Well, no, they
Yeah,
need to
out
be,
and
they
up.
need to be analytical. They need to be slightly downgrid.
Yeah, this is where, and when you put them
Yeah.
on camera, maybe but again, we talked about sometimes people will present themselves as being at a particular place on the change grid because they have a motivation. So these attorneys, if they're going to do the best job, then they need to be analytical drivers. They may even need to be analytical drivers. So they truly, really know the ins and outs of everything. That's what they need to be. But when you put them on camera, we know that this is a politically charged situation that is being watched by the world. So it would not be at all surprising to have the attorneys at that moment present themselves as this more outgrid driver kind of energy, but woe be unto them and to the client if the attorney presents themselves as being in the outgrid danger zone.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest that just because of who they're dealing with. The context of who they're dealing with, I think, would play a role in it, would it not?
Well,
Because
it's
they're
because
especially if there's a person that's not, adherent to whatever it is you're offering.
right. Well, and this is where we might need to become more activity specific. So, for example, when it comes to actually building the case and getting it all logical, all that kind of stuff you got to do, that's the real work, that's got to happen in power, rather in the analytical driver quadrant. So
Got it.
that's got to
Got
happen
it.
there. But when you're
Jay, can I,
standing before the,
can I offer
Please.
something?
sure.
As I think about this, for some reason, I'm thinking that it's not in that quadrant, that this whole scenario is in the upgrade quadrant.
Yeah, you're thinking it's really all up here.
I really do. I think we're in that quadrant with this discussion because I think the challenge and the stress of it, I think exceeds the skill set of those involved.
Right. Now,
And so my discussion would be in that quadrant.
it's so interesting, Tim, that you brought that up because I'm looking at my notes for this call, and the last thing on my notes is while right now we're seeing this being projected behaviorally, after that indictment is done, I wonder if we're going to start seeing more evidence of this. Right now, we just hear the occasional rumor or whatever. But what's about to happen is real. And it changes the rules in some pretty dramatic kinds of ways. So,
So T,
Well, T, hold up.
if
go ahead.
everybody's outgrid, a driver right now, and that's what it's projecting, there's no cameras in the courtroom, if I remember right. So nobody knows what happens as tension rises and falls during what's going to go on.
oh yeah. There's certainly that. And while there are no cameras allowed, reporters are allowed. It is open to, I don't know if it's wide open to the public, but I know that people are able to be there. But they don't want any live video, broadcasts coming from the courtroom. So, but anyway, I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know that he's been arraigned yet. But nevertheless, I think that you're right, Linda. Everyone right now is very far outgrid, and if they all remain very far outgrid, what do you think this is going to become rather quickly?
Yeah, there's going to be what Tim just described, the performative aspects of it. It's showing everyone upgrade.
Yeah, Pip. And so we got a mess to clean up if this is what's really going on. Now, I want to add one more group to this. Oh, Kathy, you've unmuted. Would you like
Hey,
to-
T. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, Chris, yeah, go ahead.
No, Kathy could go first.
No, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, if everybody's outgrid, it's nothing will get resolved.
And that's why we need a good judge. I mean, the
Yeah,
judge.
exactly. That's the good point. Yep.
I look at what's really at stake, and I think there's more than one dynamic to this, where the question is if a previous president is actually going to get convicted versus what are some of the motives behind this, Because as I listen to attorneys talk about the evidence or the case that's presented before them, what they're seeking more than likely won't stand.
Well,
It won't stand. So, I mean,
yeah.
there's different dynamics because just by this going through the process, and even if it pleads out, I don't think it's going to end up in jail time for him, but it will prevent him from running for president.
Well, and that'll be a very interesting set of outcomes to see if they actually hold true. But again, it goes back to this whole idea about tension management. Even the act of offering and accepting a plea deal is a form of tension management. And so it's all going to be that. How much of it we're going to get to see is yet to be seen. But I'm just saying that I do believe that once the reality of the situation is fully experienced, you're going to watch changes occur in everyone's levels of tension, which gets me to the third party, or the third party I have on my list here, and that is the media. Where do you think the media is? And I'm talking about just mass market kind of media sort of stuff. Where do you think the media is as far as this whole situation is concerned?
And I hate to be repetitive, but I think they're outgrid.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what's your case for it being outgrid?
Well, they're pursuing him. They're doing everything they can to get a scoop, to get information, to
Why?
be the first to report.
Because
Because it's a big story.
and they care about big stories because
Drives ads.
this is all a matter of money. And so
Uh-huh.
you're absolutely right, David. People are either going to, depending on who the outlet is either going to go aggressively for or aggressively against. And it's a lot of different things that are all going on. So you're going to watch that unfold. But kind of know that when it comes to the media right now views Trump as being, I'll say it, and you guys tell me if you think I'm wrong, as being one of the singularly biggest money-making opportunities in the history of broadcast journalism.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah,
and so-
agreed.
Yep, and so this is going to really be a media circus because that's how the media makes their money. There was one commentator who said that the best word to describe what the next X number of months, because this might not even go to trial for a year. So for the next number of months and throughout the whole thing, because of, gag orders or whatever else might be going on, one word describes it, and that is boring. No one's going to be able to see anything. They're not going to be able to do anything. And so it's just going to be really, really boring. And so this is the opportunity to make the money that can be made. So when I think of the media's position, to David's point, I do believe they are outgrid, but they are only outgrid to the point that serves them. And so if that's stirring up some trouble, if that's putting a spotlight on things, whatever it is, I do believe we've got a very driven media, but it's also because we have a very calculating media. And now you add some of the spokespersons for the media. Now we get more of that upgrade energy, fire and brimstone, and all that sort of thing. So the whole media kind of part of things is going to be right around here.
So the media is outgrid. Those journalists, commentators, and all those things that you just described are further upgrade, and then they're feeding a product to the community at large, which is another group that's upgrade, right? Because they don't want you to be downgrade about what you're seeing; they want you to be upgrade about it.
Right, because if you're upgrade about it, you're more likely to become more loyal in your viewing or in your subscribership or whatever, which makes all of your advertisers happy because now you can present audience retention numbers that are, mind-boggling. So yeah, so we just have to kind of look. There's different players, but they can all be described if in intention management terms. They're all there with their own agenda. One other subject I was going to bring up, but I thought we might as well take advantage of what's happening in today so we can process it a little bit, is this whole battle between DeSantis and Disney. So I'm sure you've read enough about it. So DeSantis and Disney. Well, someone from Disney went on the record saying the Disney Corporation is going to be here 100 years from now. DeSantis will not be. And so they're viewing his whole hullabaloo as being an irritant at worst. Isn't that interesting?
But it's working.
Well,
for the
that's all
most
fine.
part, because they have, the state legislators. When I looked
Yeah,
at,
but
the things that voted on, it's interesting.
right, but Brian, what does Disney care about?
Yeah, they care about the people that come to the park and the money.
That's
They
right.
don't care
And
about
right
that.
now, do you have any idea how busy the parks are?
Yeah, they're quite busy. They
You
stay
have to
busy.
make a reservation to even go through
Absolutely.
the gate. So you
Absolutely.
can't be jumping around between parks like we did in the good old days and all that kind of stuff. So Disney is no worse for the wear. Now, yeah,
No.
when it comes to the actual issue, there might be some financial advantages and disadvantages, whatever's going on. But my point is that sometimes tension has to be harvested in the moment because the
Mm.
situation, when looked at over a long-term period, this is a little blip that might end up just being, an interesting little sidebar on some article that someone writes. I dare say the indictment is not going to become anybody's sidebar, but you get the whole Disney drama with DeSantis. This is not going to be something that's going to be as enduring from a tension management perspective as the Trump situation. I also wanted to talk about what's going on in the Ukraine, and there's a bunch of other interesting things going on right now that I thought you guys would have fun looking at from a tension management perspective.
This tension management stuff is really quite powerful.
Well, yeah, I mean, I that's my whole goal. I mean, we can't talk about the kinds of things that we talk about on the circle. We can't do this with an audience because, first of all, who's going to hire us to do it? But that's not where the money is made in the work that we do. We're consultants and trainers and coaches and therapists and all that sort of a thing. That's how
Doctors.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think it's going to get to a point where there's going to be a need to really understand this tension management perspective. I always said attention is the greatest capital asset we have. And
That's
so if
right.
we look at this idea of burnout and now occupational phenomena, you don't need the World Health Organization to
Yeah,
categorize that. We had burnout before the pandemic,
of
right?
course.
We just need
Of
a
course.
new way of understanding each other's humanity, whether it's at work or in the community. And that doesn't seem to be happening at scale. So at some point,
It
tension
will,
management
and that's the
just
whole
needs
that's
to
the whole
work
point of
this
this.
out.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the spiral dynamic. Sooner or later, we do move up the spiral. It's just about how much hell we're willing to put ourselves through to get there.
Yeah, we're doing a great job of that now, I
Yeah, yeah,
tell
yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah.
My
So,
goodness.
yeah. And so, yes, I do believe that everyone would be better off if they had an understanding of tension management. That's why I'm going like, all right, I'm 65 years old. Do you guys think I'm being crazy when I say that unless I do something very deliberate in the next 10 years to get this material out there to a broader audience, it may pass away the same day I do. And I think that would be a real loss.
Yeah, real loss. Real
So,
loss, because
Yeah, I
I'm
agree,
still
T.
learning.
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree.
So that's why, I'm using YouTube because YouTube seems to be currently the most popular. TikTok, you can't do anything. It's too short. And who knows, they might be shut down in the US anyway. But YouTube seems to be more reliable and gives us the time that we need to do what we want to do.
Where's the tension with that, with all the people that are on TikTok?
Yeah.
Well, think of how much money these TikTokers have made. So, but no one ever guaranteed them that any form of media was going to be forever.
Yeah.
That's the people who carved stones, tablets back in the day.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
actually receiving the YouTube notifications for when you upload now. That didn't happen before. So somehow all of a sudden I'm getting notifications that a new
oh,
tension
good.
management
Subscribe.
Yeah,
video has been
yeah.
updated.
I was always wondering because obviously people subscribe to something, but if they don't hit the notifications bell while they're subscribed, they're not notified. So I think it's really interesting to see how we can get people to not only subscribe, but to do that. But that means that periodically they send out something to subscribers, unless you click the bell, did you?
I think I did, but it wasn't going. I still wasn't receiving the notifications. But like
Oh,
anytime now, when I actually go to YouTube, whether I'm looking for something else, it'll automatically populate, hey, a new tension management video has
oh,
been
good. Yeah. So it's
uploaded.
learning. It's learning.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even get notifications and we are the bell. I don't know what to say about that. Okay, anywho, that's our time for today. One thing you guys do need to know is we will not be having a call on Thursday. Linda needs to have a follow-up procedure done just to rule everything out. And she's having an endoscopy. Brian, you know what that is, yeah. So
Yes.
and
Yeah.
apparently that's an anesthesia thing. So I need to be there while the procedure's going on. And apparently she's going to be a little gorked out after it's all done.
I've done that many times, Linda, with celiac. So yes, T, you've got to be a really good husband around this. So
I
Good
will.
luck,
But
Linda.
yeah, my
Thank
greatest
you,
concern,
thank
you
you.
know,
good
is
luck.
Linda's
you.
allergic to every painkiller.
Easy-
there is.
Wishing you an easy time.
Yeah, I'm hoping.
Yeah, I
Thank
wish
so
you
much,
well.
everybody.
All right, anyway, so no call on Thursday. I'll be with Linda wherever. I don't know where we even going, dear. So
The Women's Center at the hospital.
okay,
We'll be thinking about you, T and
all right,
Linda.
thanks everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
You.
All right, take
Thank you,
care.
everybody.
Bye now.
Here, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.